News and Talk 1380 WLK, the voice of the community. Welcome back to the WLK Morning Show. I'm Eric Slaughter, and we are going to go right out to the phone lines and welcome back to WLK Janelle King from the Georgia State Elections Board and the co-founder of Let's Win for America Action. As she was a guest here on WLK earlier this week, and there were a lot of responses and a lot of questions, and Ms. King herself reached out and said that she wanted to come back and talk more about what the biggest topic in hand is, the voting and counting of voting on Election Day. And we want to make sure that we all understand this does not include early voting, mail-in ballots. We are only talking about the actual voting process on November 5th. And Ms. King, please correct me if I say anything wrong, that this new action that has been voted in is strictly for that process. Good morning and welcome you back to WLK.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. And no, you were 100% correct.
Okay, so when you heard the reports that many people, when this new vote was taken in place, the conspiracy theories started to pop out left and right that this is some type of backdoor handling of a way to try to sway the election one way to another. What was your thought process, and what is it that you want to clear up for anyone who has any speculation or has any thoughts that they are questioning why this action was approved?
Man, great question. So much to clear up. One, let's just start with the elephant in the room, I should say, is that I am not working with any campaign. I do not consider myself to be a MAGA Republican. I consider myself to be simply a Republican. I don't have any desire to interfere with our election process. Matter of fact, it's the absolute opposite. Our election process is the one thing that separates us from other countries. It's the thing that allows us to stand so firm as the number one country in the world. And it's because we are a representative republic. Yes, we have a democratic process, but we're not a democracy. We like to elect people to represent us. And what I noticed as I was joined this board was that there were several issues that were brought to me that I feel interferes with that process. You know, when I was told that people were receiving scanners for an election and finding ballots from the previous election still in the scanner, that undermines our election process. Things like that can be fixed and can be tweaked without affecting the experience. And that's what we did. So hand counting the ballots on Election Day only is important because it allows us to ensure that we now have everything we need, that every count is accurate. And again, this is on the precinct level. So we're talking about an average of about 300 ballots. Anything over 750, they can take a week to count. They can count it during the certification process. And that's allowed because we're not tabulating the votes. So I think the biggest misconception is that these rules somehow benefits any particular candidate or favors one particular candidate more than the other. It actually benefits the election process, and it keeps us in a space where we can now track everything that's happening from the ground up.
Now, I wanted to make sure we reemphasize before we let some callers ask you questions. Mm-hmm. You made a very clear point. They are not tabulating votes. They're not sitting there saying, here's one vote for Trump, here's one vote for Harris. What they're saying is 300 people walked in this door, we have 300 pieces of paper.
Correct.
There's no one sitting there actually taking a peek at the voting results. Is that the actual honesty? Now, is there a way to, moderate that or monitor that no one is actually looking at the voting results? What they're doing is saying is 250 people counted through this door. I have 250 elected ballots in our hands.
Yes. You know what? Okay, great point. So the reason why I did not support counting early voting and absentee voting by hand during this election is because I was not confident that people wouldn't be tempted to look at what's on the ballot while they're counting those ballots. And when you're talking about 12 and 13 days out from Election Day, that type of information, kind of tracking what's happening in your precinct can influence outcomes. It can create chatter on social media. So I felt like that would undermine the process. So I did not support that. The reason why I supported Election Day is because the counting won't take place until after the polling closed. There's not an opportunity for anyone to come back and try to change anything or add more or get out the vote or increase anything. So it's okay if they're thumbing through and they just happen to see what's happening. It's only on the precinct level. It's not going to affect anything. And then this process, the handling of the ballots will have to take place anyway because they have to be removed from the scanner, placed inside the secure bag, and then shipped off to the election office. So either way, there's going to be handling of these ballots. We are just making sure that while you're handling them, you know exactly how many you are responsible for, which allows the counties to know how many they are responsible for, on up to the state level, which would actually cause our election county board members to feel even more confident to certify during that certification period because they know that we have ensured accuracy.
Now, before I let you get to the callers, I'm just going to make one comment, and you can repeat that statement every day for the next 37 days and counting as this election is coming close. Even every time you say it, there's going to be a small contingent of people that do not believe exactly what you're saying. There's going to be a contingent of people that will go to the mountaintop saying that you can believe this if you want to. I also can sell you some, desert land in the middle of the ocean. If you think they are not looking at these votes, you are being bamboozled, led astray, and run amok. What do you say to a person who will not budge from that thought process?
I mean, everyone's entitled to having an opinion, and I think sometimes we forget that everyone's also entitled to holding on to their opinion, no matter how wrong it may be. That's the choice that they can make. But my job is to make sure that they have the correct information, and what they do with it is 100% on them. But the correct information is that even if someone is, looking at what's on the ballot or, while they're counting them, we're talking about, again, about 300 ballots, right? A couple of hundred ballots. So that's a small sample size. They may get an indicator of what took place in their precinct, but it wouldn't by any means show what took place statewide. So it's a very small bit of information that cannot affect anything at that point. No one can come back and start voting or adding to the vote. So, it's a risk that we've taken every election. I think that's the biggest answer is that we are not introducing the manned handling, so to speak, of these ballots. That's already been in the process. We're just making sure that we prevent what we saw take place in 2018 with Stacey Abrams and Sarah Miko Riggs and on into 2020 with President Trump, where they just felt like the counts were off. So what better way to ensure accuracy than to start from the bottom?
All right. 404-726-1380. This is your opportunity. Now, we're going to make this statement. We've made it before. You can disagree without being disagreeable. You do not have to attack anyone. We're not here to attack anyone personally. If you want to comment on the process, you want to view your opinion, you can disagree, but we are not here to be disagreeable. First up, Todd. Thank you. Welcome to the conversation. What is your question or comment?
No, she got it right. She posed the question, but the question really was an answer. There is no better way than to start from the bottom and do it the way that she's describing it to make sure that the vote is more accurate. And there's more that they can be done for the next go round. However, I do have a question though, and my question is, as it applies to efficiency, was this something that had already been in the conversation through the Board of Elections prior to this election, presidential election that just went by, and they just decided not to do it?
That's a great question, too. Yes, actually. So many of these rules that we're hearing about now, they had been presented before the board, several months, in some cases years ago, as a way of, trying to rectify some of the stuff that we saw happen in previous elections. However, the previous boards just saw it differently, and they decided to just sit on it and not support it. And I look back over some of the decisions in the past, and it just felt like it was extremely stagnated, I mean, there's one thing to just disagree with a couple of rules, but to see a board that seems like it wasn't moving at all, and we had so many elections passed with different challenges, I guess right now what's happening is that the board is kind of wakened up and is now doing what they're supposed to do, and it does look different. It does look like a lot is happening quickly. But, I mean, unfortunately, they just had to wait until we got a board that was willing to go to work.
Do you think you need more Election Day workers, and do you think there should be a budget made to pay Election cycle workers?
So we actually examined that. That's one of the things I always look at is this: how much is this going to cost? And what I found is that in most cases there should not be an increase of labor. And when you have just a handful of ballots, you can just count those with the individuals who are there. And then the next day, you can bring back the same people, or you could employ additional people who may have already been on the payroll. They already each county has their budget. I do not see this impacting it a great deal. It may be a small bit, but not a great deal, not enough to where that was the number one concern. Most of the people that I talked to discussed, just maybe, having people who are there for 12 and 13 hours and them being tired. So we amended it to address that issue, but the cost wasn't something we heard as a major concern.
Todd, thank you for those questions. And thank you for Ms. King for answering them. The right to vote.
Yeah, those were great questions.
And the comfort in knowing and the security knowing that my vote is going to be counted and counted accurately is the biggest question in hand. And that's what we are addressing this morning. More calls out there, 404-726-1380. Ms. Denise, welcome to the show. And what is your question or comment?
Hi, I have a question for Ms. King. I work with the election board. I'm one of the volunteers. Yeah, hello?
We hear
hello?
you. Yeah, we hear you. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. Was she saying hello?
I can't hear.
You can't hear me? Hello?
Well, you keep going. If she can't hear you, I'll relay the question. If you can't hear her, Ms. King, I'll relay the question.
All right. I work advanced voting in person, and I also work on election.
Is she gone? Okay, Mr. needs to be out there. Call back. Ms. King, you're still there, right? Hello. Did we lose? Okay, we have lost everybody. 404-726-1380. Ms. King, if you're out there, call back in. We do have another guest lined up, but we will figure out a way to continue this conversation. She's coming back? All right, Ms. King, we have you back?
I heard Denise. I didn't get to hear her question.
Okay, if you're still there, Mr. Denise, you do have time. Go ahead and post it now.
Okay. Right now, I work for the election board on advanced voting in person and also on the day of election. And each and every night, we take every piece of every one of the ballots out of the box and count them before we send them to the main office. I'm confused. Why is there another special process? Because that is done. I've been working with the election board since 2014, and that has been a practice. Is there something I'm missing that you want to do 300 instead of all of them? I don't understand.
No, great question. What county are you working with?
Cobb
County. Okay. So that's another great point. So what I noticed was there are county precincts that currently do this. So what we're doing is we're also creating uniformity. And so if you're currently already doing this rule, then you don't have to worry about any type of adjustments. You'll just continue to do what you've been doing. What we've done is create a uniformity across the state. So now of other precincts, all the precincts in the state are going to have to do this on Election Day. And that way we can ensure that we're not, doing one thing on one end, another somewhere else. And then when there's discrepancies in the count on the state level, they're struggling to find out who and where it went wrong. So kudos to you for already doing this. Nothing will change for you.
So if that's the case, because I thought that was across the board in the whole state, why are we just counting 300 votes and not all of them that come out of make sure that all the because I thought that was across the board. So my ignorance, my bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. No. So for clarification, no, you are counting all of them. What I was speaking of is the average. We found that on average, when we looked at all the precincts and how many ballots each precinct typically has on election night, we saw that on average it was around 300 ballots. But the most we saw was 1,700 at a precinct in Fulton County. And we know that those numbers can fluctuate, which is why we amended it so that if there are counties that have more than 750, they can count theirs starting the next day and throughout that certification week so that their people are not tired. But no, you are counting all of them, no matter, whatever that amount is. But I like to use the average when I'm speaking of statewide.
Well, that is all the time we have for you this morning, Ms. King. We do appreciate you coming back and giving more clarification on this process. And if we find out that we need to have you back again, it sounds as simple as can be, but there's always questions, and we have 36 more days to talk about this, and we will have you back again to clarify and just talk to the people and our listeners. And we appreciate you. We hope that you're staying safe out there as we get through what we're going through here in the state of Georgia, and we thank you for your time.
Absolutely. And I thank y'all so much, man. What you're doing is so absolutely necessary. I do not blame people for misinformation. I blame us. I blame people not giving them the information. So y'all are doing great work. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll be back anytime you need me.
All right. You have a good day and stay safe. It's News and Talk 1380 WLK. We do have to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about development in Fulton County. As the chairman of Develop Fulton, former Congressman Kwanzaa Hall will join us next here on the WOK Morning Show.